Free agency is over. The NFL draft is over. It is time to get ready for the 2020 fantasy football season. In this episode of the Fantasy Football Show on Radio.com Sports, we look at rookie running backs for Dynasty and redraft leagues. What's up, everybody? My name is Steven Andres. Welcome to the first episode for the 2020 season of the Radio.com Sports Fantasy Football Show, and welcome to my basement. Hope everybody's staying healthy at home around the country. And with so much going on, I did want to take a moment to highlight a great charity within the fantasy football community. It's over at fantasycares.net. So many within the fantasy sports world support this charity, helping raise money every year for kids whose parents cannot buy them toys at Christmas time. Let's get that number to a record level this year. So if you find this content informative, maybe consider donating a few bucks over at fantasycares.net. All right, for this first episode, we're looking at my top 12 rookie running backs in Dynasty leagues. Now that the NFL draft has passed and we know the landing spots of each of these prospects. And let's look at that top 12 overall right now. The first three are in their top tier. Clyde Edwards-Helaire of the Chiefs, J.K. Dobbins of the Ravens, and Jonathan Taylor of the Indianapolis Colts. I have Dobbins just slightly ahead of Jonathan Taylor in these rankings because of long-term appeal and stability of that Ravens offense, rushing at an elite level with the current MVP in Lamar Jackson. Then we have a tier break to Cam Akers and DeAndre Swift. I'm not sure either of them will ever see bell cow work in their offenses, thus the tier break outside of the top three, but those two still firmly in my top 5 dynasty running backs for 2020. Then another tier break, only one running back in tier 3, and that's my number 6 dynasty RB and Keyshawn Vaughn of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I like his landing spot. I think Bruce Arians is looking for a 3-down back to work with. He said as much multiple times this offseason. Then we have another tier break to tier 4 and the rest of my top 12 running backs. These guys are pretty much interchangeable. You're pretty much just throwing a dart at this point to see who you think will have the best long-term value. But I do think Antonio Gibson of this group is the most intriguing. He has all the athleticism that you would want in a running back, although he did not have any touches really at the college level, less than 100 touches in his college career. But all of these guys have some intriguing long-term appeal if you look at the incumbent running backs on their team and the athleticism they provide. So these are my top 12 dynasty running backs for 2020. So let's go into a little bit more depth now in this class, beginning with Clyde Edwards-Helaire of the Kansas City Chiefs. A dual-purpose running back, one that Andy Reid comped to Brian Westbrook, even saying he's better than his old former Eagles running back. But Edwards-Helaire, the only running back selected in the first round of the NFL draft. And if you look at touches by first-round rookie running backs since 2015, of the 7, all but one had at least 197 touches. The only one was Rashad Penny with 94. 6 others had more than 197, and 3 of them had more than 300 touches. So first-round running back draft capital usually translates to immediate impact on your fantasy teams. As for who Edwards-Helaire thinks he best compares to at the NFL level, here's what he had to say for himself.
Most recently, I would say Josh Jacobs. He's a guy that was versatile. He came out and he was able to do everything that was asking him. Pass pro, running between the tackles, being able to catch the ball is something that I feel like he prided himself on. Little bigger than me. I have recent comparisons. I get the Maurice Jones-Drew and all that and everything else, but for the most part in the past, film-wise, Marshall Faulk, Kevin Faulk were 2 guys that I watched a lot and understanding, route leverage and on routes and everything else. And me being able to ultimately catch the ball is something that really sets me apart.
We certainly already know he's a fantastic pass catcher, 55 receptions last year at LSU for the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And we already know that this is an elite offense with stability at the quarterback position. The short-term value and the long-term value that Edwards-Helaire provides in this Chiefs offense makes him the obvious RB1 for me in 2020 Dynasty drafts. Now let's move on to my RB2 and RB3, and I want to tackle these together. J.K. Dobbins and Jonathan Taylor. Most in the industry will have Taylor above Dobbins in their Dynasty rankings, and I think it is absolutely fair to put Taylor above him in redraft leagues, but I think this is a virtual tie in Dynasty drafts, and I'll tell you why I think Dobbins may present the better long-term value beyond 2020 if you're looking down the road. And there are a few factors to consider. Both have incumbent running backs who will likely be gone in 2021. Marlon Mack of the Colts is a free agent after 2020, and Mark Ingram on the Ravens has an opt-out clause in his contract, or else the Ravens will have to owe him more than $6 million in 2021 in his age 32 season. Dobbins, his path to touches in 2020 might not be as dire as everybody thinks it is. The Ravens gave 206 touches to Gus Edwards and Justice Hill last year. I don't think it's entirely crazy to think that Dobbins beats out both of those guys and gets the majority of those touches and maybe eats into Mark Ingram's touches at age 31 a little bit as well. Jonathan Taylor, likely not to be a bell cow in 2020. Frank Reich, the Colts head coach, has repeatedly said that it will be a 1-2 punch, a split with Marlon Mack, as he's always done in his entire coaching career with multiple teams. And I love the talent, but Taylor has fumbling issues. He's had a lack of volume in the passing game in college. Those are concerns when you're trying to differentiate between elite dynasty running back options. Now, Dobbins matched Taylor's incredible 2019 college production. Both of them had 2,000 yards last year. Dobbins' game log in the final 4 games of his college career was absolutely incredible, considering the opponents he faced, especially that last game against Clemson. Go look at that. It was absolutely off the charts. And JK attributes a key trait to that success.
I think I have vision that's out of this world. It's definitely a God-given talent, so I think that's the best thing about my game. I'm a pretty athletic guy. I'm pretty fast as well, and a lot of people try to say that I can't catch because, I accidentally took my eyes off the screen pass in the playoff game, but I had 70 catches or more than 70 catches, so I think I can catch pretty good.
So for me, the tiebreaker between Dobbins and Taylor is the long-term outlook for their offenses. Lamar Jackson, the MVP, locked in an elite rushing offense for Dobbins. Maybe some uncertainty in the quarterback position for the Indianapolis Colts beyond 2020 after how poorly Phillip Rivers already played in 2019 with the Chargers. I like the outlook for the Ravens offense a lot better long-term than I do for the Colts, and that's why I slightly have Dobbins ahead of Taylor in my Dynasty rankings. Let's move down to tier number 2, Cam Akers of the Los Angeles Rams. The reason I don't have him in tier 1 is because Sean McVay of the Rams has repeatedly said that this will likely be more of a running back by committee with Todd Gurley no longer in the picture. And we all know, most know at this point, that Akers had one of the worst offensive lines in the draft class, but the Rams' offensive line at the NFL level was poor as well, just 19th in adjusted line yards per Football Outsider. So combine that with the likelihood of a running back by committee, and I'm not sure Akers is ever going to be a bell cow at the NFL level. But the one positive in his favor is the draft capital. The Rams did spend a second-round pick on Akers in a draft where they did not have a full complement of picks. So maybe his path to volume isn't quite dead, but it's enough to keep him out of that top tier for me. Moving on to number 5, DeAndre Swift of the Detroit Lions. If the path to bell cow carries was bad for Akers, it's worse for Swift. There's too many red flags in this offense long term for me to consider him more than just the 5th running back in this class. Matt Patricia is on the hot seat. He's in a pass-first offense with Matthew Stafford at quarterback, and you're looking at a Lions offense that over the past few years has had bottom 3 numbers when it comes to the number of games they've seen a running back see 18-plus touches. So combine those things. I love the talent of Swift, love the player. I hate the landing spot. This to me is more real-life football value than it is for fantasy. Down a tier again, tier 3. The only one in this tier for me is Keyshawn Vaughn, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Bruce Arians has made it abundantly clear this offseason what kind of running back he's looking for in his offense. And I think he's also said, without saying it, that he doesn't have that running back on his roster yet. A third-round pick on Keyshawn Vaughn, and I think he might have found it. The talent here is solid, and I think it's better than what they already have in Ronald Jones. That lack of clarity in the backfield, though, is why he's not higher in my rankings. If we knew he was going to be the bell cow, he would be above Swift in the rankings for me. But Ronald Jones is a poor pass protector. He was so in college and at the NFL level. It's what got him benched December of last season yet again by Bruce Arians. But Vaughn gets it. Vaughn absolutely understands pass protection.
Got this quarterback who getting paid $100 million behind you, and you get him hurt, no job for you. So that's the biggest thing far as why I need, I won't say improvement, but I know that's going to be the biggest obstacle that I have to achieve.
Arians wants a guy he doesn't have to take off the field in the middle of games. He had to do that with Ronald Jones. Keyshawn Vaughn showed he's the type of running back that you can leave on the field in his time at Vanderbilt in college. Let's move on to our bottom tier now for the second half of these top 12 Dynasty running back rankings and really break down the guy I think is the most intriguing ball of clay, as some of the old NFL coaches like to say. This guy could be molded potentially into an elite running back in the NFL because he certainly has all of the athletic tools. Washington rookie running back Antonio Gibson out of Memphis. If you look at what he did in college, there wasn't much to see. He had less than 100 touches, only 77 career touches for Gibson, but man, did he have some eye-popping athleticism. He broke 33 tackles on those 77 touches. At 6 foot, 228 pounds, he ran a 4.39 40. The same as Jonathan Taylor in the 98th percentile of running backs in NFL Combine history. He went through the Combine as a wide receiver, so matching Jonathan Taylor's workout numbers didn't really get much hype because he was being listed as a wide receiver. But if you put it now into the context that Washington is designating him as a running back after drafting him, those numbers become a little bit more eye-popping. He doesn't have the game tape that Taylor does by any stretch of the imagination. He barely played in college, but the athleticism is undeniable for Gibson. And if he gets a chance and he does well with some coaching, look out. And when asked what he thinks would translate quickly at the NFL level, I found this very interesting that Gibson had this to say at the NFL Combine.
I feel like running back probably. I run the ball natural. I see the hole pretty well. And I'm a matchup problems against linebackers, so I feel like running back would definitely transfer quickly.
That soundbite only catches my ear more now that he's on a team that's going to play him at running back with a new coach who's not married to any of the other previous running backs on the roster, and the athleticism that he has, and no clear starter at running back for the Redskins. Antonio Gibson is the round 2 running back dart throw that I'm making in Dynasty leagues in 2020. Let's go down to Anthony McFarland, running back 8 in my rankings of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And this has to do with not only potentially long-term value, but a path to short-term touches as well with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I asked Dr. Edwin Porras on Twitter at FBInjuryDoc what he thought about James Conner's injury history with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He told me Conner has finished 13, 12, and 9 games since 2017. Each year the injuries were connective tissue related, and Porras is a believer that when it is the same type of injury, in this case connective tissue, that does lead to a greater likelihood of re-injury in the future. So even if healthy, it seems Conner's volume will be scaled back by the Steelers, and long term he's a free agent after 2020, and it's hard to see the Steelers re-signing him. So insert McFarland, who adds something GM Kevin Colbert said after the draft the Steelers don't currently have in their backfield.
The one thing we know is he can give us a different dimension to our backfield combination because of his speed and his big playability, which he did on a big stage against a really good defense at Ohio State. What piece he'll be, we won't know until we get into camp, training camp, etc. But we do know that the piece that he can give us is something we'd like to add to the group we have.
McFarland had more than 200 yards against Ohio State, so combine what Colbert said, what we know about James Conner's injury history, and the fact that his athleticism is not currently on the roster, He makes for an interesting dart throw in the second round of Dynasty leagues in 2020. I like McFarland's potential to break out maybe as early as his rookie season. Moving on to RB9, and it's A.J. Dillon of the Green Bay Packers. Now, admittedly, I think this situation, this organizational situation, is less than ideal. I think it's a bit of chaos right there internally for Green Bay after taking Jordan Love in the first round. It seems like there's a bit of a feud going on between Matt LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers, but the draft capital can't be ignored for A.J. Dillon. He was a second-round pick. I don't like the athlete in A.J. Dillon, but I do like the landing spot. Now, if you looked at his combine testing numbers, they looked pretty good, but the tape shows below average acceleration. He's slow through the line of scrimmage, and he doesn't show great vision as well. More of a plotter, not a great pass catcher. The people making comparisons to Derrick Henry, to me, that's way too oversimplified of a comparison based only on his 247-pound frame. What he actually does with the ball is very different and a lot less exciting than what Derrick Henry does. So he theoretically has a path to starter touches in 2021, which is why he's at this point in my rankings and not lower, because the backs below him now do not have that theoretical path. Moving on to Joshua Kelley of the Los Angeles Chargers, who may not have starter touches in line over the next couple of years with Austin Eckler in this offense, but he does at least have a path to a split backfield and a run-first offense. Austin Eckler, even last year when Melvin Gordon was out the past couple of games, didn't get more than 18 carries in a game, and overall for the season averaged less than 9 carries per game. He's just an offensive weapon. So with Melvin Gordon now gone, he vacated 204 touches from a year ago. Those all won't go to Eckler. They're going to be split. Obviously, Eckler is the 1A, but Joshua Kelley, I think, has a path to being the 1B. Only has to beat out Justin Jackson in this backfield. And Kelley is a prospect who NFL Hall of Fame writer Ray Didinger tabbed as one of his 3 favorite sleepers of the entire 2020 NFL draft across all positions. He does have above average athleticism and a solid college production profile. PlayerProfiler.com compared him to Sony Michel, which is really intriguing if you think about it. When you take out the injury history of Sony Michel, just as an athlete, that's a good comp for Joshua Kelley. Our final 2 Dynasty running backs in the top 12 will run through quickly. Zack Moss of the Buffalo Bills. He's a 2-down grinder. He was tabbed by Bills GM Brandon Beane to bring to the offense what Devin Singletary does not. Really those between the tackles, hard runs, short yardage, might get some goal line work for the Bills, but given that this is only going to split into the backfield workload of Devin Singletary, that makes me severely downgrade Zack Moss based on landing spot, and I'm going to downgrade Devin Singletary as well in redraft leagues with Moss now in the mix there as well. And number 12, Deejay Dallas of the Seattle Seahawks. This is my deep bench dynasty running back flyer for 2020. If you're looking for a lottery ticket after all these other guys have been drafted, this might be the guy you want to go for. Just considering the injuries currently at this position for Seattle. Let's not forget at the end of the year last year, they were so banged up they had to re-sign Marshawn Lynch out of retirement. And maybe most importantly, Seattle has taught us to never discount a running back in their offense based solely on where they pick them in the NFL draft. So now that we know my top 12 running backs and I break them down a little bit, where do they fit overall in my Dynasty top 24 rankings for the 2020 season? Let's take a look real quick before we wrap up the show. I'd take the top 3 running backs over my top 2 wide receivers this season based on better landing spots with additional projected volume early in their careers. I'd still take Lamb and Judy over Akers and Swift, not knowing if either of those running backs will ever be bell cows. My only other first-round running back is Vaughn, but I'm not taking him over my top 5 wide receivers after they wound up in fantastic landing spots in offenses with plenty of available targets. Moving on to round 2 in Dynasty overall, Antonio Gibson's athleticism is so intriguing, but it would be still a reach to take him over a polished wide receiver in a good landing spot like Michael Pittman Jr., or what some are calling the best quarterback prospect since Andrew Luck in Joe Burrow. But I'd have no problem taking a chance on Gibson over the other wide receivers in this round, given how much coronavirus might stunt rookie wide receiver production with no offseason and how few rookie wide receivers have ever hit in year one in fantasy football leagues, even before this COVID-19 abbreviated offseason that these players are going to have to overcome as rookies. But the rest of this running back class is very much in a tier below. I cannot defend putting them above the top 10 wide receivers in this historically deep rookie wide receiver class. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Radio.com Sports Fantasy Football Show. Again, my name is Steven Andress. In the coming weeks, we're going to have a few more episodes for you. Broke down running backs today. We'll break down my top 12 rookie wide receivers coming up. And we'll also take a step back, look big picture at who overall in fantasy football were the winners and the losers of the offseason, whose situation was improved, and whose situation should be downgraded for the 2020 fantasy season. We'll see you next time.